SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae has put hundreds of millions back into the hands of Mississippi's citizens, expanding the state's affordable college and career savings program and also returning record amounts of unclaimed money. Check out how Treasurer David McRae's office can help you, your business, or your organization. Treasury.ms.gov.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Man, oh man, I was just telling Rhino before we went live here that I was all prepped up, read up, analyzed up, opined up, ready to go, and then wow. The president drops a bomb, metaphorically speaking, not to be confused with the actual bombs dropped in Iran, but in a good way. Says, you know what? We're going to hold off on attacking the Iranian energy infrastructure, postpone it for 5 days. He says they're having conversations with the regime, but he also made it clear he's not sure who's in charge. Does anybody know? Not really. And he took some time this morning. I heard him live. Look, no matter what you think about the guy and no matter what your opinion is of his policies and his comportment, you got to admit this, Rhino. The guy will stop and he will talk directly to the American people. If it's not on his Truth Social, sometimes in a very crude sense. But Maria Bartiromo had him on the Business Channel this morning, and he didn't hesitate to accept. Think about that, because the time between his announcement on his Truth Social platform and him being live on nationwide air was just a few hours. And then, of course, he was departing. I'm not sure exactly where he's traveling to today, but as he always does outside the West Wing, he took some time to meet with reporters, and I mean in a protracted discussion with a number of reporters, all firing questions at him. I just respect that. I think it's great to see that a president is willing to engage and will take as much time as is necessary. It's not, remember Joe Biden, oh, they said I got to go, I can't do this, call on that person. It was all so choreographed, so scripted. It was terrible, and that's because he's not a person who could think on his feet or for himself. And
he's going to Memphis today.
Memphis, that's right, exactly. I thank you for that, because I saw something from the Memphis Republican Club making an announcement about it.
Yeah, the Memphis Safe Task Force Roundtable.
There you go. Yeah.
I think it's going to be at noon.
Okay. So he stops again out on the West Wing in the little semicircular driveway that services the White House, and that's where all the reporters hang out. They got their tents. And what do they call it? Something Beach. Can't remember exactly. I learned that when we did the show up there a year ago. I'd never heard of that before, but it's where all the reporters have tents, literally, side by side.
Talking about Pebble Beach?
Pebble Beach, yeah, that's right. That's what I wanted to say, but I said, is that right? I knew it was the golf course, right? And I'm not sure where it got its name from. I'm sure there's some history there. But literally, you could see it. It's inside the fence. It's on the right of the semicircular driveway, of the right side of the semicircular driveway. That would be the west wing. And there's a plot of ground there, dirt, grass, and there's probably 10, 12 tents. Now, I don't know what it takes to be one of the media outlets that gets one of those tents, but literally that's where they're set up. And when the president comes out, boom, off they go. They're just a few yards away, but I just respect the heck out of him for just engaging, because people are starving for information, and they know that the world is hanging on to every word that he says, as they should be. He's the most powerful person on the planet, leader of the free world, but he engaged, and he answered questions for a protracted period of time, and that's after doing an interview earlier in the morning with, again, Maria Bartiromo. But the big news he delivered was that we're going to postpone, because it was just, Saturday, right, Rhino, when he issued the ultimatum. Said, you guys better stand down and stop the attacks and open the strait up, or all hell's going to break loose, basically. And then he comes out this morning and says, so maybe that ultimatum brought them to the negotiating table. We don't know. And we're not entitled to know, honestly. We know what the president wants us to know, no more, no less. So he says that the U.S. military would postpone strikes on their power plants and energy infrastructure for 5 days following, quote, productive talks between Washington and Tehran. In all caps, he said, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. So the markets flipped around, were trending downward by as much as 1,000 points, the Dow, pre-market futures. And then after this announcement, boom, shot up. And currently, we got a rally going on. The Dow up more than 1,100 points. 1,116 to be exact, 2.45%. The NASDAQ up 530. That's also 2.4%. The S&P up 2%. So this is good news for your 401k plans and your investments. And the price of oil, that's it's the reason. So it's not hard to figure out the price of oil and the markets work in opposing directions. As the price of oil increases, the markets sell off, and vice versa. So you saw what happened this morning, right? The price of oil comes down by about, $11 a barrel. I mean, a precipitous dive, about the way that it had increased last week when it looked like this thing's going to go on a while. And we're going to have this shortage of oil, constriction of the supply. So essentially, traders feel good about getting this thing open and restoring the shipment of oil through the strait. Something else I was looking at to get a little more familiar is this Jones Act. I got to tell you, until last week, I didn't even know that was a thing. I never paid attention to that. And you know what it is. You're shaking your head. It basically says if oil is traveling from one port to another, it's got to be on a U.S. vessel. And it turns...
U.S. built, U.S. crewed,
correct.
U.S. flagged.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, through and through, end-to-end United States vessel. The problem is we produce gas, lots of it, natural gas. This country has more than any other. We have an abundance of it. We export it. And often, this is crazy. It gets pumped out of the ground and loaded up on a ship that is not an American ship because there are not enough of them. And then it goes across the sea for further processing. And given the constriction we presently have on fossil fuels, that's why the president, you saw the Secretary of Treasury last week announce we're going to suspend the Jones Act for a while, which simply means that this is crazy. Like, I saw a report that gas could go to a port in Pennsylvania, then have to go across the ocean to come back to Baltimore. Something crazy like that. I got that right. Huh? It's your understanding.
Yeah, and there have been some wild workarounds, like with our neighbors to the north in Canada, where they would literally ship it to a port in Canada and run it on a single strip of railroad that crosses the border and then load it back on.
It's insane.
So that it would actually go to a different country and then come back in so it could be shipped.
Well, guess what? All that costs money.
I think they got in trouble for that, too.
Unbelievable. For trying to circumvent what's really dumb.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was like a quarter mile of railroad track. It was literally take it off, run it up the road, offload it, run the train back, do it all over again.
Incredible. Well, I was just astonished when it was put in that perspective that, oh, yeah, this short travel from Philadelphia to Baltimore, it's got to be done via Europe first or the Middle East. That just made no sense. Anybody would look at that and say, that's dumb. It's right down there, right? But the president emphasized again, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and he highlighted again they were ever so close within a few days, and they're lunatics. We're coming right back with Representative Steve Lott. We're going to talk about this oil situation.
Hello,
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
There she stood in the street, smiling from her head to her feet. I said, what is this now, baby? Maybe she's in need of a kiss. I said, hey, what's your name, baby?
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. I'm betting you could play that on the guitar.
I have.
Representative Steve Lott is our guest.
That's tough vocals for somebody, though.
Ooh, isn't it, though? Representative Lott, of course, a member of the Mississippi House of Representatives, represents District 107, which incorporates George and Stone counties. Also, more importantly, he's the lead guitarist in the House band. So we got two of the members of the band here. What a blast that's been, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. It has. I was glad we finally got a chance to get practice in last Wednesday. Of course, you could tell it was very obvious. We had a lot of rust that we still had to shake off, but it all kind of, toward the end, it seemed like it started kind of coming back.
It got better. Yeah. My daughter was there. She recorded us playing Brown Eyed Girl, and I played it for a few people. I said, you guys actually sound pretty good. Well, that's the goal.
That is the goal. That's right. That's right.
All right. So Rhino and I were talking before we went on the air and then in the first segment about what a whirlwind it's been the last 3 days. The president delivering an ultimatum to Iran about the whole situation over there, and that had people feeling even more dour about the prospect of getting a resolution and getting the oil flowing again in the Strait, which accounts for about 20%, 25%, right, of total global production,
right,
which is 100 million barrels, a little bit more than that, a day.
Something
right?
like that,
yeah. We're 20, roughly, of that, the U.S. is. So, but then he announces this morning, hey, guess what? We've had some talks since they delivered the ultimatum. We're going to postpone any further military action for 5 days, see how it goes. The markets reacted positively, and they did because the price of oil dropped. I just saw it on the screen. There it is right now, $86 now. So above 100 to start the morning off in the futures. But it's just so volatile right now. So talk to us about your background in the industry so we'll understand your expertise here.
Well, of course, I was in production, manufacturing. We refined oil. I had 30 years of it there. It's kind of broke down in thirds. I did the first 10 years roughly. I was doing primarily the manufacturing process, making gasoline, all the products. And then about the middle of my career, I spent a lot of time with project management. We did quite a few. Pascagoula did several. Chevron did quite a few investments over a period of about 15, 20 years with different things. They're up into several $1 billion, and I was one of them. I was lead operations rep on. We had an older technology to reformulate gasoline with. It's fixed bed and from 1940s technology, which it doesn't matter. It still works, but as your severity gets more, then it takes up a lot more of your OpEx of managing that. So I spent about 5-6 years, of course, stayed on the road all over the place, and we built that one. That was about probably about $600 million project. That was one when you go there and you sign an AR and you sit there and like, oh, now I got to make sure this works now. You spend all that time getting everything together, doing the economics and all your studies and everything, and then when you sign it, it's like, man, all right, let's make sure. So several years going into the field, building the plant, and if you ever in Pascagoula, you see the tallest structure. If you happen to look at the refinery out that way, that's the one we built up there. It's like 350 feet tall. So, and then the last third, I actually got into supply chain. I didn't really have any background. It's just I was always, fortunate thing about the company I work with is there's always windows to expand, and I jumped into supply chain, and then I did that for about 10 years, which was primarily scheduling all the ship traffic coming in and out of the refineries, which finished products going out, but also the crude coming in and all the products. So dealt with shipping quite a bit. It's not as simple as just as a ship coming in and out. There's so many things that go on with it. So it's I look at this like you talk about the Strait of Hormuz, where the bottleneck is. Well, in that area, it's like a 2 mile per direction channel right there. It's only about 35 miles wide. Oman has a good bit of it, but Iran's got enough. But they're supposed to follow international maritime law, but yet if Iran decides they don't want somebody to come through there, they don't go out there and block. They'll shoot nowadays with everything going on. So you can't take a ship through there. It's like physically it's not closed, but yet if you go through there. Now there's a few ships like going to China that they've allowed to go through in and out. Just very few, but it's like only about 3% of the normal traffic.
Gotcha.
So I was looking at estimating, and it was like, say if this opens back up. Well, there's about 2,000 ships, tankers kind of stuck in the Persian Gulf right now. There's not enough docks for them, so they're just at anchorage. Well, you got to have people bunkering those ships. You got to have people, the stores, getting everything. That's a lot of moving parts. There's people on those ships, and all the potable water, the food, the fuel, because typically if a ship stays under power all the time, you can't just shut it off, And
yeah,
it's just like we had a rule when they came to our dock, the ship had to be at full power at all times on our dock, just in case we had an incident. Hey, we had to call and say, get off the dock. They'd be ready to go. So you're still burning fuel. So they had to. So even if things open back up, there's a whole bunch of stuff's got to happen before everything gets really moving.
Okay, get it rolling.
Right.
All right. So, but it does appear that at least the president seems optimistic. His tone, his message this morning that we're on our way. It sounded like that if we can get through this, whatever the negotiations are, that perhaps we would deploy the military to escort these ships through the strait, which is just pretty critical. And oil, as you know, is a globally traded commodity.
Right.
We got two grades of it. So even though we may not import and consume from that region, it still affects the price which it is sold and traded essentially on our markets.
That's right.
So I think a lot of people are consumed about that. Like, well, why is ours going up? We don't get any from there. It's because that price, really only two prices, right? You got the Brent crude, and then you got the West Texas Intermediate. Those are the two markets. Unless you sell outside of the market, which is what Iran's been doing to China. You just avoid the market. But if you're participating in the market, the price that it's being bought and sold at, oil futures, is based on that single price.
That's exactly right. And that's the one thing that gasoline is a global product. It's a global market. Whether we want like it, it is what it is. And so disruptions anywhere in the world depending on the size of it, impacts our price because we supply a lot of people with gasoline. And, say China, one of their moves they do is when something like this happens, they just shut off all their exports. They keep it all to themselves. Well, we've got so many trade partners, we can't just cut off where we're getting our fertilizer from. I mean, right now, you got to keep it going. So, and we only get about what you said earlier. I think at most maybe 2% of our crude comes from that area. So it's not a lot. There's just like with Venezuela. If you get Venezuela stabilized, it's not like you're trying to get more volumes in the barrels in the market. You're stabilizing that supply, and that's a big key there because how any business they want consistency. And stability, and that's a big key right there. So, but it is a global market, and it impacts everybody. And
yeah. Well, last I checked, we produce about 13.8 million barrels a day. I think that's what we're up to now. But we consume almost 20 million barrels, and so of what we import, about half of it comes from Canada.
Yes, right.
Is our top trading partner, right?
That's right. A lot of the shale oils. It's a lot heavier. It's a challenging process. I mean, we talk about some of this stuff. It's the thicker crude, but this literally, if you set it in room temperature, it would almost solidify.
Wow!
So you actually have to. That's why you have to blend different slates in it a little bit. Some of it is like that.
Okay.
Not all of it, but some of it is. We were trying to figure out a way a while when I was still there to, get in the supply. There's no pipelines. We were trying to figure out a way to rail it in. Of course, you'd have to, when you rail it in, you'd have to have some way to heat it back up to get it to flow to pump it off. So it was a lot of things to do. But it's still there, and it's still, based on the margins, it's still a feasible crude to run like that. But then, there's other grades, we get. But
well, that was the purpose of the XL pipeline, was to pipe it straight from Canada down to the refinery central area in Houston, right? That was the purpose.
I think Houston I've been away a while. I was thinking somewhere maybe down around New Orleans or something, but I don't know.
Right.
Around that area.
But the concerns, of course, is that it's real heavy crude, and it should there be a leak, it would be particularly harmful to the environment. But you hadn't heard a lot about the XL pipeline. It was under construction, and then, of course, Biden shut that down. The president comes in and lifts those orders and regulations. But the last I checked, it's really not going anywhere at this point. Doesn't appear that there's any interest in getting it finished because they maybe think that would jack up the supply, which would drive the cost down.
Drive the cost down, right.
Yeah. So there's a dynamic there. Hang around. We keep talking. Representative Steve Lott is in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. As the Who bumps us into this segment, we're visiting with Representative Steve Lott. Has a very extensive knowledge of the oil and gas industry, spending a career in that. Currently serves District 107, George and Stone counties. So it looks like that right now the traders are optimistic. And of course, the other thing that I guess we need to point out is that when you look at those prices, you're looking at futures, and you're looking at the price of what is expected to be the price of oil traded, bought and sold at some point in the future. And so far, if you look at out at the December futures, it's like in the 60s, 70s. So there is an expectation that we'll get back to some degree of normalcy, although I want to say since the president's been in office, we hit like $54, $55 a barrel. But, Steve, once we get to about 50, that causes problems for the oil producers, right?
That's correct. It is a balancing act. If you get prices too low because of domestically the cost to produce in the United States. If you don't get a certain amount of margin, it's not feasible to pump it out of the ground per se. You know it's there. You know where your oil is. It's kind of like that's what we call reserves. What are your known reserves? Where there's X number of barrels under the ground down here. Now, once it becomes feasible, where they could make a margin to get it out, with the market, if demand comes up, then they'll go in and start doing that. So it's a balancing act. The Florida magic numbers always we talk about used to be 50. I think it's as time goes on, you talk about it's roughly about $60 now. What most people like to keep it above now, a little bit. I mean, now it's if you look at based on just adjust for inflation, you go back when it's about $60. We'd be paying about $2.20 a gallon. But if you adjust back 30 years back on it, that's not. Just from that perspective, that's not a bad price for gas. Yeah. I mean, we always want to pay less, but and you talk about the traders, and each of the oil companies, these traders, they don't necessarily operate in a silo per se. Like what's so. I mean, when you come to a global market, you have to some degree you help each other out because that's the only way you can maintain business. Everybody's kind of got to pitch in a little bit. It's not like you're operating for this other company, but you may come up short, like a shipment got delayed over here. You can call up a trader on the open market, and there might be somebody over here say, well, I got a shipload of this. I'll sell it to you for this. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's just for everybody's sake, keeping stability in the supply chain is very, very important. It's very important for us because it impacts what we pay at the pump.
Sure. And, of course, the oil and gas companies that explore and produce crude, they balance that out with the price. I mean, they manage their production, and if the price gets too low, they start holding back. So even though we may enact favorable regulation for drilling, drill baby drill, like the president says, the oil and gas companies may not be necessarily too eager to do that, because if they do and they increase supply, that drives the price down, then they don't make any money, and so they pull back on that to get the price back up. It's a constant balancing act.
Yeah, it's a very expensive, everybody sees what the profits are with the oil companies, and they are really high, but you'd be surprised. I mean, I was like in a day's time, I'd be scheduling probably a couple $1 million worth of product a day.
Okay.
Coming across back and forth. Yeah. That's that kind of money that's involved in all this, and the OPEX that goes with it. Yeah. I was trying to just roughly figure out what the payroll daily. I mean, the daily payroll at the refinery itself is in the seven figures. That's what it costs to do that kind of business. It takes a lot of people and a lot of equipment. You got a lot of regulations you got to deal with. Reasonable ones that keeps things safe and keeps the community safe. But it's not like sometimes you see on the movies about these chemical plants. I could take you to a refinery, go out there with all the effluent. The effluent leaving the refinery is better than it. A lot of times better than what it came in. Not that it's bad. It's just that we'd always go to those steps to make sure it was clean before it left.
Yeah. So one of the issues we have that just in doing a little research on this is that most of our refineries are built around processing the heavier sour crude, correct?
Right. That started back before I got there, when they started doing a lot more of the Arab crudes, the heavier sour ones, and they converted a lot of these refineries over because you see the WTI price. Well, there's a big differential between what WTI is and what these heavier crudes are. So you got and you're in business to make money, so you try to find a better price crude, but can I process it reasonably to retain a really good margin on it? And that answer is yes, you can. You improve your technology over time. It's a lot more severity goes on. I mean, we got plants, when we use a lot of hydrogen, we make hydrogen, and you use a lot of it to clean up the plants and to process this.
So the West Texas Intermediate, just so the folks will know, that typically is the light sweet crude, correct?
Right.
And we don't have a lot of refining capability in this country, so we literally take it out of the ground in West Texas and ship it overseas for further processing.
some. Now you can run it, but you have to blend it in with the heavier stuff and there's a balance depending on what the demand is for certain products. You can blend some of it in X% of this, and it's a linear. Most all your specs are linear when you calculate, but you just got to be doing assays all the time on it because it changes all the time.
Yeah,
and assays are not cheap. So
yeah. Well, what we were hoping for, and maybe there is a breakthrough. There was an announcement a couple of weeks ago about a new refinery going to be built. And I didn't really notice whether or not that refinery will be built to process the light sweet shale type oil that we're pulling out of the ground more than the old heavy crude. It's certainly in this country. And that's really because of the advent of shale technology, is it not?
Right, that's correct. Yeah, I haven't really dug into what that refinery is going to be doing myself, and it kind of got me interested in. I'll look it up and have a little bit more information at some point. But that is the first new refinery in a really, really long time.
Like 40 years or something like that. But, it seems like if we had domestic refineries built around processing this new grade of in this huge volume we have of shale coming out of Texas. Is it South Dakota, I think we get a lot. Pennsylvania, New York, lots of shale there. If we could process that here, seems like that would drive the price down, but the oil and gas companies could still make their necessary margin and to be a win-win situation.
Right, that's right.
We just need somebody to step up and build a refinery or two.
Yeah.
Or more.
That is, and that's so much of a... I talked about that project we did. Well, there was another project come in behind that one. We were actually looking at putting a whole new crude train in, but it evolved to base oil plant, which you make the base oil, which you blend to make your finished lubricants and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think that one was over $1 billion.
Wow.
You work on the project details for many, many years because committing that kind of capital, you really need to know what you're going to do because you don't want to get into it. And, you could put yourself in a bad spot
without a payback.
Yeah. And that's a lot of money to tie up. So
yeah.
But that's the key. And if you're going to build a new refinery, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of work goes on. It's probably going to evolve over a period of time into something different. But
so can you explain the timing difference between people naturally see the price of oil goes up and then immediately you see the price at the pump go up? And then if people complain, say it seems like when it pulls back that the retail gasoline is a little slower. But I've always been under the impression that they know how volatile it is, and when they have an opportunity, they try to make a little money, knowing that out in the future they're probably going to end up losing money on the sale.
Yeah, it always does seem it gives me the appearance that it goes up a lot quicker than it comes back down.
Right.
One thing. And depending on who the retailer and who the jobber is, they may have bought X number of barrels at the higher wholesale price, but then they got to sell that too. And when it gets higher, that demand slows down a little bit. So if you try to go back, and I'm not taking up for them, but if you try to drop that price again, if you drop it less than what you paid for it, then that's kind of a thing. So I think that has something to do with why it comes down slower a little bit like that. Plus, Trump, the president announced this morning, hey, we're talking. You don't know yet of his results.
Yeah, so all we know is they're talking.
So you got to be,
the reaction's purely speculative based on his remarks at this point. So we don't really know.
So the market will want to know for sure that this is happening. So
yeah, before they start making adjustments all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. And, of course, most people, I think, are aware that the retail sale of gas at these C-stores primarily is where it is bought and purchased, that we consume it. That's not really what they rely on to make their profit. They want you to go in the store and buy all that other stuff that they make much higher margin on.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of things in there. It's amazing where the biggest margin on things is. The little packs of pain reliever, let me get to Advil. You would be surprised what that markup is.
A lot more than they make on that gas.
Oh, yeah.
Representative Steve Lott, he represents 107, the district. That includes George and Stone County. Also, the lead guitarist in the House band. Been fun being with you today.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming in. Yep. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
In Mississippi.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
The great Tom Petty bumping us into this segment. The dial's pulled back a bit now, but it's still well into the green. I got to tell you, Rhino, it's nice to see a little green on the screen because the month of March, and in particular the last couple of weeks, have not been good for your investments. The funny money, it too, has been reacting to that. But the big thing that we can take a little consolation in is the bond yields. That's also a big part of that. And the president's aware. He knows what's going on. But he also understands, and he's made it quite clear, we can't stop now. We have got to ensure that these nutcases can never build a nuclear weapon. And in fact, he cited 5 objectives. I think I can remember them. 5 objectives. It is, you'd have to agree, refreshing that, okay, if we're going to go to war and start putting Americans in harm's way, I believe we've lost 13, right, since the conflict began. 6 of those in a refueling accident. Tragic. Big time. But still, it's during the war, part of the war operation. Just wasn't combat. But the president says we got 5 objectives. That's 5 more than we ever had in Vietnam, was it not? Because I was 0 for that one. We're fighting communism. Really? In Vietnam? What a damn waste that was, man. And it's so sad thinking back, because I was around then as a youngster, the way we treated those people that returned. Not everybody, but the wackos. Are they not the same ones, Rhino, you talk about, the hippies that are out there today screwing up everything in the country? Same people, right? These were the ones that spit on our troops when they returned from Vietnam, who just went to do the job that their country asked them to do.
Yeah, they'd been screwing up the country for decades by the time I was even born.
But 5 objectives. He said, first, to severely degrade their ballistic missile capability, and also to completely destroy their ability to produce missiles, to fully eliminate their prospect of producing a nuclear weapon, to obliterate their Navy and their Air Force, and then finally to ensure that the neighboring nations are safe. The 5 objectives. I support those objectives, but again, I just got to say, that's fairly specific as you can be in a situation like this. War's chaotic, let's be honest. So if you can define those 5 specific goals and objectives, and when those are achieved, we can call it a day. I'm good with that. But I'll just point out, I'm just pleased to see we actually have a list of definitive objectives. That's kind of rare, given our history, certainly maybe since World War II. I'm not sure I totally understood what happened in Desert Storm and Desert Shield. I think we kind of had some objectives, but I don't know. It was hard to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, that job's over. Not sure that made sense, honestly. Afghanistan, another situation where it kind of reminded me of a more desert-like Vietnam. Certainly a rugged terrain in the hills. We're not as good. We weren't as prepared, I should say, as the native people were that were defending their land and didn't really care. And the same, we found that to be the case in Vietnam, did we not? When we got in the jungles, you got crazy people that place 0 value on life.
And a perfect example of how the hippies, especially the hippies that worked in and continue to work in academia, have ruined the way American society views the brave men and women who fought in Vietnam. Because every generation after Vietnam was basically taught by the revisionist historians, the crazy hippies in academia, that we lost Vietnam.
Yeah.
When in reality, we pushed North Vietnam to a point where they had to come to the table and negotiate a ceasefire.
Right.
That negotiation occurred. We left, and they decided, well, we're just going to renege on that.
Totally true.
We beat them into submission and left, and then they brought up aggression again. How is that a loss?
I completely agree. But that's the way we roll, and it's kind of sad. All right, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, we've got two pharmacists, Joe Michael Roberston and Fair Jones, going to talk about the PBM reform. Lots of questions also on the C Spire text line we'll get to later if we have time about the disconnect between the price of retail gas and the price of oil. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's a Monday. That means it's a 2-hour show. Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors, comes your way at 12:05 today. But right now, it's Joe Michael Robertson, of registered pharmacist, owner-operator of Wallace Drug Company in Laurel, Mississippi, and Fair Jones, owner of Sav-Mor Drugs and Gifts in Grenada, Mississippi. Joe Michael, Fair, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you having us. We're always excited to talk about independent pharmacy.
All right.
Yes,
so, man, that has been elevated, I guess, to the number one issue down there at the state capitol.
That's awesome. It's number one to us for sure. So
we're happy
about that.
All right. So we got a House bill that got transmitted down to the state Senate, and the state Senate introduced some amendments, and now it has been returned to the House. It is waiting on concurrence. Last status I saw, that was over the weekend. I don't think anything's happened since then. They'll be gabbling in this afternoon. So I'll start with you, Joe Michael. Okay. Do you believe that the House should concur with the measure as amended by the Senate?
Absolutely, I do. I believe that the current bill that the House has before them is really the only option for us as independent pharmacies to stay open. And so a little bit about how that process happened in our view is when we started this process in the House, Representative Donnie Scoggins dropped a bill for us. And so at the very last hour, this HB 1665 came out of the committee. To my knowledge, nobody in pharmacy was aware of many of the things in it. We hadn't read it. We hadn't seen it. The dispensing fee, going to the Department of Insurance, we had no idea. And so I believe by law it has to go onto the computer so everybody can read it and see it. And 2 minutes before the session started is when it got on the computer electronically. And that same day, they pushed the bill through. And so we had no clue what was in this thing. So at first we were like, well, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. But as we got to dissect it, we realized there's a couple key issues that really, it may say PBM reform. I know a lot of folks say we are really for PBM reform from the business community, and we come to the table in good faith. But you know, when you come to the table, you have two people there, or two groups that get to help decide that, and we didn't have a say. So we felt the best option for us was to do a strike all and to change the bill to some things that we just frankly have to have in pharmacy to stay open. And so Rita Parks did a great job with that over in the Senate, and so we can't thank her enough for stepping in and stepping up and helping us get some meaningful and that's the key here, meaningful PBM reform. And so here we are back at the House. And honestly, like we were last year, we took a different approach last year. We all came down sit down at the table before the session, right before the session, and we thought we had an agreement with the business community, PBM reform, and passed the House. I think there were 4 people voted against it. Got to the Senate and went to conference, and unfortunately, it was in conference. The bill was gutted, and they even added a reverse repealer that would have taken out all the laws that were in the current laws today. And so we were forced to have to kill the bill, and so here we are, and so we're excited for the opportunity for Representative Hank Zuber to recommend to concur House Bill 1665, and let's move forward and keep independent pharmacy going. And so a couple of the key issues here is I know a big hang-up is the dispensing fee. And so I think Fair was going to share a couple of things there and about kind of address some of the business community's concerns about that.
Yeah, and we will. But before we get there,
Sure.
Here's what's confusing to us, just mortals that don't understand all this stuff. Yeah. We got the business community, like the Mississippi Business Alliance, the electric co-ops, that are all saying this is going to increase their costs, and it's going to increase the cost of premiums, the part that is borne by their employees as well. So they're opposed to this dispensing fee.
Right.
And then we know the independent pharmacists, of course, support it and make a pretty good case. Both sides do, honestly, both for and against. How are we supposed to figure this out? I mean, that's where we are, Fair. Can you help us understand this?
Well, it's a very complicated issue, and I think to simplify it to say however many prescriptions maybe that plan is covering, multiplying that by 1129 and coming up with a number, that's not really all of the parts of the equation, to be fair. There's lots of different things in the bill that will help with some of that, like the no spread pricing. That helps the employer. That helps them really see what the pharmacy's being paid, what they're being paid, or what they're paying, excuse me.
I know what that is. Explain that to our people.
Yeah, so spread pricing is basically where maybe an employer group, a plan sponsor, they agree on a price they're going to pay with their PBM on a certain medication or the medications. And then when they turn around and pay the pharmacy, those two amounts are different. So they say, we're gonna charge you $10 for this type of medication, but we're only going to pay the pharmacy $5, and we're going to pocket that $5 spread right there. And so there's so many different pricing formulas that are out there right now that really help kind of almost hide that spread in these contracts. And so when you go to something more standardized like this NADAC plus dispensing fee, that kind of eliminates that spread, and it helps everybody be paid on that same level, that same amount. So
one thing to understand on that, this is a big key issue in my opinion. So right now they're doing AWP. Okay, that's actual wholesale price. This is an inflated price that the drug manufacturers come up with, and that's what they're currently paying is AWP. And so the new formula, which, by the way, is in currently in 11 states. Is that right?
Yeah, it's many states have done the exact same thing.
That's right. And so it's NADAC plus 1129, this dispensing fee. NADAC is true cost. It's our invoices. We send them in. The federal government averages them all. They put it out. Anybody can see it. The patients can see it. True cost. And so whenever you say true cost, NADAC, the true cost is 22% cheaper on brand names and 93% cheaper on generics.
Than AWP.
That's right. And so NADAC plus 1129 on almost every medication out there is much cheaper than AWP's price alone. And so that's where the semantics are getting lost. And a lot of times they say, well, if I've got a $3 or $4 blood pressure medicine and I go in the pharmacy and that's what I've been paying, it's going up to $14. That's, again, not right. This is not a copay. Okay? This is a dispensing fee. Currently, this same model is going on with Medicaid and NADAC plus 1129. They have a zero copay. It doesn't affect copay whatsoever. And so people say, well, that money's got to come from somewhere. There's an inflated price with AWP.
So as you know, that's inconsistent with what the Mississippi Business Alliance and some other plan sponsors, employers are saying. Do they have it wrong? Do they just not understand this? What's going on there? They're pretty smart people, these business people, right?
And they are, and we all are looking out for the best interest of all involved parties. I would say that, I would like to see where are they getting those numbers from? What are these PBMs actually telling them about these costs? I would think that they're probably not giving them the whole truth because it's not transparent for them either.
So you're saying they're just to make sure you believe they're getting their information from the PBMs.
That's right. That's exactly where they get it from.
When they're
and my guess is the PBMs are saying if this goes through, this is how this is going to affect your premiums.
Right. Exactly.
And so here's the deal here. What they're using is inaccurate projections. What we have,
they being the PBMs.
Yes, and in the business community is using to come up with some of these number here. They're using inaccurate projections. What we have is actual data from every state in the union when it comes to Medicaid, and also there's 10 all around us. Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Arkansas, they've all implemented NADAC plus a dispensing fee. Anywhere from a little over $10 up to $15 dispensing fee. There has not been one scenario whether it's made the price go up. That's actual true data. Mississippi Medicaid, $55 million the first year, and so we have data from every state in the union. Ohio, $200 million. They're going to save money. Now, while they're against it, there's some other reasons out there that people are saying, and so that's something that maybe the business community can answer.
We got a break right here.
Sure.
You guys can hang around, right? So,
yes, sir.
All right, so what I want you to think about on the other side of the break is somebody's eating this. Who is it? If you're going to go from this price model to that price model, and that's going to drive costs down, who's absorbing those costs? If it's not the employers, the sponsors, and, of course, the insured. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We're talking PBM reform, which I would say arguably has been elevated to the top issue in the 2026 legislative session. We got two pharmacists in the Element Wealth studio talking about that. All right, so you indicated, Fair and Joe Michael, that these PBMs have been found, or at least charged with, sued over violating their contracts with the federal government, and I would say with some private sector entities as well, I believe is what you said. I've seen that too. I've seen reports about that. So that just sounds like the typical contract dispute more than anything. And so, but what we know is that all these adjustments is converting to this price model that you recommended, and you explained, and I appreciate that, that if we went to this price model, plus a dispensing fee that's actually less than the current price model, the average wholesale price without a dispensing fee.
Right.
That means there's revenue that's coming out of the supply chain. Somebody's got to eat that. Somebody's getting paid less. Who is that?
Well, excuse me, I keep getting my throat caught. There's a lot of other things that, like we've said, that kind of go into when you think about all of these different things. One of them is, again, the difference between like AWP and NADAC. But then when you think about drugs like your specialty drugs or the drugs that these PBMs say are a specialty drug, that price is so inflated that,
And it's my understanding, while you're clearing your throat, my understanding is that to the pharmacists, the retail pharmacists, specialty drugs do carry with them a significant margin relative to the very low margin, more typically dispensed medicines.
Sure.
Is that true?
Absolutely. Trey Fair actually had an example that she'd like to share with you just a couple of weeks ago. And we don't get any specialty in our independent pharmacies.
But everybody's not able to dispense those drugs.
Yeah,
is that not a problem today?
That is a problem too, as far as the definition of a specialty drug.
Okay.
So we don't control what is considered a specialty drug. That is the PBM. They decide what is going to be considered a specialty on their contract. So let me give you this example.
Yeah.
So I had a patient come into my pharmacy about a week or so ago, and he has prostate cancer, and he was talking about he was waiting on his medication for his cancer to come into the mail. And he was just complaining because it had been a week and he wasn't supposed to miss a day, and we were just kind of talking through it. And so it kind of got my bells ringing a little bit, and I said, well, can you tell me what drug that is? And he told me, and he said, do you know what my insurance is paying every month for this drug? And I said, what is that? He said, $17,000 every month, and I've been taking this for 2 years. So I go on my wholesale website to just see if this is something that I could even order. Sure enough, there it is. And do you know what it cost me? $120 for me to purchase that exact same medication per month. So his plan is paying, however, what percentage that is, a lot more every month to go to a specialty pharmacy. This drug had no special dispensing requirements, no special certification to handle it. It was what we do every single day. The same drugs we dispense every single day. But because it has this specialty designation, they're able to upcharge it that much. And so what happens is he's forced to go to the mail order. So he goes to the mail order to get this medication. The mail order is affiliated with his PBM.
Yeah.
So the PBM's getting paid, a lot more than what they should be. And then the patient ultimately is out of a week of worth of his cancer medicine. So, again, it's just not as easy to say, that this is going to cost the plan more. There's so many other factors that factor in, specialty being one, transparency for these employers to be able to see where their money is going, how much the pharmacy's being paid, how much they're being charged for that medication. That is going to be powerful for them. And it's just not as easy, again, to say, well, the cost is going to go up because of the dispensing fee. Well, you have to factor all these other things in too that are ultimately, they're probably really going to help lower their cost. And it's just hard to understand that when you don't deal with all these other parts of it every single day.
Mr. Gerard, the key, like she said, is transparency.
Sure.
They're paying us one price, and they're paying their own pharmacies 15 times. You wouldn't believe some of the numbers here. Here's one thing that everybody is familiar with, Zofran for nausea. Everybody's taking Zofran. Our pharmacy gets paid $16, which NADAC Plus would be similar to that. Currently, they're paying their own pharmacies $386. So when this transparency gets put in place, they're going to have to pay themselves NADAC Plus. The $386 goes away. That's where your money's going to come. It's who's going to eat it? With transparency and these businesses seeing what's going on, they better make the PBMs eat it. Because CVS Health brought in $400 billion last year with a B, over $1 billion a day. And so they got a lot of room to...
they made 12, though. They don't make that much money.
Just $12 billion? Okay.
That's less than Kroger margins. How much should they make? How much should they make?
They should make enough that like we're asking for.
3%?
We should ask like we're asking for. They shouldn't make like us, paying us below our cost. One of my friends.
I'm not disputing that, but I'm asking you, how much should they make?
How much should they make?
On $400 billion.
On $400 billion? I don't know, but I know one thing: the greed should not.
So profits greed?
The greed that they currently do. No, profits not
okay.
greed. But $400 billion when all these independent pharmacies are going out of business. 55 in the last few years. One just went out of business in the Tupelo area. Some of our colleagues, 70 years old. He said he put $300,000 into his business to keep it open last year so he could support his family. And so
in 25, by the way, they made $1.8 billion.
I'm sorry.
On sales of $400 billion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not crying any tears. To be honest,
should they lose money?
Absolutely not.
How much should they
I'm
make?
not concerned with them. Okay, I'm concerned with independent pharmacy.
Well, I am too.
And as long as they're
can we find a happy medium here? Because
absolutely, that's what we're here for.
Okay,
that's what we're here for.
Why is the business community? I still don't understand why they're so opposed to this.
Something you may have to ask them. There's something out there called rebates. Drug kickbacks. And so the business community gets kickbacks from drug manufacturers. Right now, if a medicine costs $100, the PBMs, because they control 80% of the market, go to these drug companies and say, look, we're not going to put you on our formulary unless you give us a rebate.
I realize
and so
that.
they'll raise that thing up to $400.
They use that as a cut.
Right, and they'll each take. Why would the PBM need to take a profit off that?
Do you think we need to eliminate PBMs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's many places that say we don't need them.
Insurance companies should just handle that on their own without having a side business to do that.
Yep, they have proven to be inadequate and to be greedy and to take
do you believe
advantage.
Do you believe that would drive the cost down if they got rid of them?
My goodness, $1 trillion. That's a lot of money to go around. Is what they're bringing in right now. So I absolutely
revenue, but not profit.
I agree. I understand that, but still, there's a lot of money out there that's being abused, and it's been proven to be. Like she said, there's a lot of things from the federal government right now that they have been found guilty.
California just converted their Medicaid program to use Mark Cuban's Cost Plus system. What do you think about that?
I think it's a step in the right direction. What do you think?
I think it's very similar.
Would an independent pharmacist be able to participate in that?
Well, as far as his program itself, like Mark Cuban's program, that's what we do. I love what he's doing. I think he's bringing awareness to what we're going through. But, for me, I can do Cost Plus without having to use Mark Cuban.
That's exactly what this bill is.
Okay. I'm glad you said that.
Because yes, sir.
He says Blue Shield of California, they're partnering with him. They say that is going to save $500 million a year moving to Cuban's plan.
It's been proven. Every time that a state or a business has converted an 8 Act Plus dispensing fee, they've saved money. There's never been a time.
They have 4.8 million subscribers in California.
Sure.
So I want to make sure, though, the formula, the financial formula that you're proposing,
right?
Not to be confused with the pharmaceutical formula here, it's similar to Cuban's model.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Sure, it's cost.
So why can't we get the business people to go along with this? And I know I don't mean to be beating this horse, and you say I need to ask them. And I have, by the way.
A lot of times we really don't know. But like I said, there's a lot of employees out there that are suing businesses because this money that they're getting back in rebates are not going to lower premiums.
Okay. No, I agree with that.
And so there's reasons out there that only maybe they can answer. And so that's
should the government force that to go back to premiums? Is that what you're advocating for? I'm trying to understand.
I'm thinking that what's the reason to even have rebates? There's no reason. It's running up the price.
Pretty common in business, though. I worked in the IT industry. That was very common.
Doesn't mean it's good just because it's common.
Some states have put into law that these rebates are required to go directly to the plan sponsors to lower these premiums and the cost share.
And that's what you seek in Mississippi, huh?
Well, our law does not. It does say that 100% has to be passed back to the plan, but what the plan does after that, there is no provision in there for that. But you would think that would be used to help lower those.
Hang around.
Premiums.
We keep talking.
Great.
We got one more segment. And that's all I got today. But we'll get through one more segment. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Bring it on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're talking about this PBM reform situation in the state of Mississippi with Joe Michael Roberston, a pharmacist for Wallace Drug Company in Laurel, owner-operator there, Fair Jones Sav-Mor Drugs and Gifts in Grenada. So certainly two independent pharmacists who have deep expertise on this subject matter. That's why you guys are here today. So again, how do we get the business community and others who fear that, hey, today my prescription's $5, and once we add this dispensing fee, I'm going to absorb it, and it's going to be $16.29. Right. I think that's the fear, honestly, Joe Michael. How do we get people comfortable with that?
Well, I think if they will just go and look at the data out there that we've presented, and it's readily available, and not use these scare tactics that some of the folks out there are using. That it's proven, like I've said multiple times throughout the country, to lower cost.
Okay.
And as Fair talked about, with a lot of these things going away with transparency, then it's gonna be a cost saver for everybody. She had mentioned earlier about some of the things that the federal government had caught these PBMs in, and that's a lot of money out there that's going to be left in the pool.
Yeah, I mean, and even states, Tennessee, which right now they're kind of doing Arkansas, where they're kind of disaffiliating PBMs and from owning pharmacies, but they did an audit and they found that one of these PBMs, they found like 11 violations where they were like overcharging the plan. In particular, they were favoring like CVS affiliated pharmacies, where they would pay them 16,000% more than what they were paying a non-affiliated pharmacy, and this is just right next door in Tennessee, in a commercial market. So again, when you have transparency and when you can see what is actually happening and what pharmacies are being paid and what you're being charged, that is so important, and you have to be able to see past this $11.29. And we get it; it is something to think about, but you can't think about it by itself. It has to have these other things in there. And when you're paying one pharmacy 16,000% more than what you're paying someone else, when you take that away, when you go to this standard cost-based benchmark pricing, that will take care of that, and that is going to ultimately help these employers. And so I feel like they should be embracing this. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but I really do.
That's a great point, Fair. I've heard a lot of folks say, well, don't we have federal regulations out there? Didn't the federal government just pass things? And they did. But the things that they passed are going to deal with Medicare and don't really deal with these things that this bill has in it. And really the big thing to people to remember is 2 years before that thing takes effect. And we just don't have 2 years. It kind of thinks me to thinking about the Department of Insurance. I know that's another hang up. They want it in the Department of Insurance. And it's in 48 states. It's in the Department of Insurance. Why can't we have it in the Department of Insurance? And what we say to that is, we want it in whatever agency can handle it. When Rita Parks was in her committee, she testified that she spoke with Mike Chaney, and Mike Chaney said he didn't want it. And if he got it, it'd take him 2 years to get it up and running, to even oversee him. Again, we don't have 2 years. And currently the State Board of Pharmacy is overseeing them. They have just hired a person the last year. That's all he does is PBM oversight. And so if the Department of Insurance can say, we're ready to roll and we can do a good job of doing it, we're all for it. We just need, and not only for pharmacy, but for patients, to have a true oversight. And so we just looking for whatever agency that it's going to better be oversight in, and that's what we want. That's what we want to have it.
So I think, just to frame this issue, the independent pharmacists serve a very valuable purpose within the ecosystem, in particular in the state of Mississippi, where our population is widely dispersed.
Sure. Yes.
And we have a lot of rural areas, and there is really no option for many of those patients in those areas, and we don't want them driving 80 miles to get their prescriptions.
Right.
That's not good. You guys need to make money at it, though, to survive. I think that's what we're hearing. That's the message you're delivering. Correct me if I'm wrong there, that the way the current system works, it's rendering you to the point where it's just not viable, economically viable. Yeah. On the other hand, the employers want to make sure you get it, that they're able to keep their costs down. My gosh, insurance premiums continue to rise in this country. It's a major expense in operating a business. It doesn't matter what size your business is. And then, of course, their employees, they don't want to have to pay more money as well. Surely we can find some reasonable compromise solution here that protects our independent pharmacists but allows market forces to dictate pricing to as much as it makes sense to as well, and that of course employers can manage their costs as well as their employees. Surely we can figure this out.
I would hope so. I mean, we just want to continue to serve the communities that we're in.
Sure.
Most of us are in small rural Mississippi, and
I know your patients, when they come in, they rely on you. You guys counsel them.
They do. And you said earlier, PBMs, shouldn't they make a profit? Well, sure, they should. Just like the employers, their duty is to protect their bottom line.
Right.
The thing is that this is not just our bottom line. This is our life. This is the entire thing for us, and so we can't afford to keep subsidizing their cost or the mismanagement from these PBMs. We are on our last lifeline, and so yes, we're passionate and we are very we want this to happen, but it's because this is our last shot. This is what we need.
I've heard some of those comments about I believe in capitalism. Why should we subsidize these pharmacies? And they've made some comparisons. Like I heard some attorneys say, well, we don't ask the law board up there, the law, to give us a fee. And so it's apples and oranges. Right now the PBMs dictate what we get paid. They only dictate for us, but they dictate for themselves. And as we've mentioned, they're paying themselves 15 times more. And so the analogy would be if there's a big law firm out there and they owned a bunch of smaller law firms and there's some independents, that big law firm would say, okay, we're independents, we're going to pay you below the cost to operate your business. But for ours, we're going to pay ours 15 times more. And there's nothing you can do about it, because you know why? Because just like the 3 PBMs, the big 3, over 80% of all prescriptions filled in the country, they control by the big 3. And so if we don't take the contracts, we don't even have a business. All right, so we're caught. We're caught right now. And if we don't get some help this year, then there's going to be mass closings in independent pharmacy.
I think, to your point, the big challenge that's unique in the healthcare industry is that there is a different payer than the actual consumer. Right. And that's what complicates things dramatically. Right. And it's the same problem with just standard health insurance for all the services that are outside of the pharmaceutical aspect of a health insurance contract. It significantly complicates things, and it's been causing problems for decades, honestly, in this country. So, just curious, Joe Michael, I believe you're on the board, right, as well. So, has your board reached out to the Mississippi Business Alliance, to the ECM? Have you said, hey, can we get together, maybe have dinner and a couple of drinks and talk about all this?
We have been unsuccessful. We have.
Well, what do you mean now? Does that mean they won't meet with you?
Absolutely. That's exactly.
They won't meet with you.
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
So I just interviewed the president, John McKay, last week.
Before this thing got started, we were meeting with Hank Zuber. Okay. And to his credit,
Representative Zuber.
That's right. I'm sorry, Representative Zuber.
No, that's fine.
To his credit, he was trying to work something out. We had a couple meetings. We began the talks, and one day we had a meeting to start to hammer out some of these things. Okay. And they didn't show. No call, no show. We show up.
So the Mississippi Business Alliance did not show.
That's right. Representative Zuber called them while we're sitting there on speakerphone and says, "Where are you?" They said, "We had a conflict." And guess what? We were never able to get them back to the table. So we've tried. We want to work something out, but there's some ulterior motives going on there, and so we can't help that. All we can do is try to fight for our independent pharmacies, fight for our small communities. Hey, fight for our patients, because we talk about the deserts out there. The deserts are coming. You know what? In Mississippi, there are three states right now in the whole 50 states that are pharmacy deserts, and Mississippi's one of them.
No doubt.
And not only are we one of them, 45% of our state.
We are for primary care doctors as well.
Absolutely. And so to that point, our healthcare system for rural areas is a house of cards. You know that these hospitals out there are struggling, and in these smaller rural areas, independent pharmacies are struggling. It is a house of cards. One guy walks from Delta City once a month to Rolling Fork to get his prescriptions, 14 miles. It's a travesty.
That's crazy.
And then when that pharmacy closes in Rolling Fork, We're talking about life and death here.
No, I get it.
So we've got to do something.
And I don't want that to happen.
Now.
I don't think anybody wants that to happen, honestly. I haven't heard anybody say, including those who oppose this legislation as amended. Nobody said, gee, yeah, we want to kill the independent pharmacists.
But I just don't think they know how urgent it is.
Yeah,
I don't think they know how urgent
fair
it is.
Enough.
It's urgent.
You're making that point now, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
And I'll continue to make that point.
Well, thank you. We
legislators
appreciate you.
as well. I think that makes sense. But I also feel like we just got to get both sides together and hammer out what makes sense for everybody.
Maybe we can come on here and meet with you.
I'm all for it. We got 3 places
there
here, as you know,
Let's
so
do
we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got about 20 seconds left.
Right.
I just want you to tell me what you think is going to happen this week with this legislation.
Well, we've got a big day planned. We're going to continue to obviously fight for what we believe.
Okay.
And I think that the House of Representatives is going to do the right thing. They're going to vote to concur and not send it to conference.
Polyup, Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
To the town of our Frio rode a stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say. No one dared to ask his business, no one dared to make a slip. The stranger there among them had a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. It was early in the morning when he rode into the town. He came riding from the south side, slowly looking all around.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. Final segment today because it is a Monday. That was an interesting discussion. It's a super complicated matter, and now you know that, Rhino, and you worked in the industry. You know how dang complicated this is, and is it fair to say government complicated this to a great extent? And the reason I say that is because government has inserted itself at such a deep level in the healthcare industry, and in particular, I've said this many times on the show, you look at the dollars spent on Medicare and Medicaid, and you consider the fact that there are more people in the state of Mississippi whose insurance coverage is from Medicare and Medicaid. We have more people covered by government insurance than we do private commercial insurance. And that in itself, does it not just complicates the heck out of things? Because can you name another product or service where, there's 5 prices, right? There's not another one, is there? Now, that doesn't mean that when you're negotiating as a consumer and you're buying something, automobile would be a vehicle, common transaction. Sure. It's whatever you can work out. That's part of the fun. If some people enjoy that, I do. Some people don't. Buying a car, a house, right? That's a ping pong match between the buyer and the seller. Anytime you've got large ticket transactions. But here we're talking about a $4 prescription. Well, it's $4 under this plan, and it's $18 under this plan, and it's $13. Who the hell can figure all that out? It's true. You know what I'm talking about. It's the Medicare price, the Medicaid price, and then it's multiple different commercial price. Oh, and then it depends on the plan, and it depends on the employer, and the freaking day of the week, and what color shoes they got on. I mean, literally, it gets that complicated. But it's the only thing like that. Imagine going into, just use a simple example. You walk into the McDonald's, and you look at the menu. Back in the old days, it was a sign. Now it's digital, and it's pretty cool. It's all digital signage. There's just one price for the Big Mac up there. They're not 5. That's what makes it so hard. And while finally people just say, Uncle, you know.
It would be maddening if you walked into the Mickey D's and the Big Mac cost one price if you were a member of AARP,
That's right.
Another price if you're a member of the local VFW, another price if you're using Visa, and then another price if you've got Discover.
Oh, man. That's just unbelievable. Russ and Rankin says spread pricing should be illegal, just like the old Justice Court judges getting paid when they fine someone. Just shouldn't be part of the process. So does that mean distributors shouldn't make a profit? You see what I'm saying? I mean, I get it because you got a third party paying on your behalf. That's what makes it complicated. That's why the even concern about spread pricing comes up, because it's a third party inserted into the middle of the transaction. And I'm not defending CVS when I mentioned it, and I did look it up. The data I had was from 24. In 25, their profit decreased substantially. I'm not feeling sorry for them, just like was said during the interview. But they made $1.8 billion on $402 billion of top line. That's terrible, terrible. That's not gonna impress at a minimum, and it's not exactly what you could call super excessive profit. And who defines that? That's the whole problem, is that the market for insurance and everything in healthcare is grossly distorted to the point that it's not really even a market. That's what makes it hard. So should we be mad at NVIDIA because they make 65% gross margin, actually net margin, on their chips? Apple, 70% gross margin on iPhones? We still buy them. Nobody's complaining about that. Well, sure, you complain, but not to the level we do about healthcare. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just pointing out the contrast between those two industries. We could go through a bunch of other ones as well. But I do feel like because this stuff is so expensive, more than the consumers can afford, they know they've got a limit on what they can charge for all this, and they just work overtime, you know what I'm saying, Rhino, to try to figure out how can I squeeze this dollar here and that dollar there, and they still ain't making but $1.8 billion on 400. That's not a lot. Wow. We're out of time here today. Back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.